Fonts are fine, but what about colors? Today you will learn how to set font and background colors, apply a background image to your world, and create a blur effect on that background image. You will also learn how to import a custom font you uploaded to Github. So let's do this! To import a custom font into your theme, you need to upload it to GitHub. Keep in mind that it needs to be in a public repository. Navigate to the font and get the link. Then, in another browser tab, go to raw.githack.com. Paste your font link in here and copy the in production link. Open your style sheet from last week and add another font definition. This is done with add font face, and you will only need to name your font family. In the source property, type URL, then open and close a round bracket. Paste your link into the bracket and remove any unnecessary spaces. Make sure that there are no single quotes surrounding either your link or your font name. Next, declare a variable for your font, as you learned last week. I will link last week's video up in the corner so you can watch it again if you forgot how to do it. Once you're done, style any element you want to style with your new font. I decided to assign it to the H1 text of my world, which means the world name and the article title. Paste the CSS into your world and check how it looks. If you have some problems with font details, try to adjust your font weight. This defines how bold your font is and has usually a value between 100 and 900, with increments of 100. To adjust this, enter font weight as a selector, followed by a colon. Then enter a new numeric value. It's best to start at the lower end of the range and increase the value until you are happy. Now, with the fonts all done, it's time for a color scheme. I like to create one from a background image I want to use on World Anvil. To get the palette, navigate to coolors.co, which will allow you to upload your image and get a color palette from it. The link to the website you will find in the description down below as usual. Click Browse Image and locate your background image. Then upload it. Besides the existing color palette, click on the plus or minus sign until you reach the desired amount of colors. I usually go with around 6. You can click on any of these circles and move it around until you have a palette you are very happy with. When you are done, click on Export Palette and select CSS in the pop-up window. Copy the CSS hex part, which are the variables for your color scheme. Then paste the CSS in your variable container within your style sheet. Make sure to add a comment above so you can see what this is all about. First, let's set the background for our content area. I want to have the background of user CSS, the content section of user CSS extended, and the map sidebar with a dark purple background. To do so, I create a new section in my CSS and comment it backgrounds. Then I will add a code block, which specifies the sections this should apply to. Here I actually made a mistake. If you follow along, make sure that you add the class page behind your user CSS extended by adding a space and then .page before the comma. Inside the code block I added the selector background, and as a property for this selector I added my background color variable. Just like you did with the font families before. Calling a variable is always the same. To assign a font color to a font, go to the block of the element you want to apply this to. As a selector, type in color, then call your font color variable like before. I decided that the predefined colors will be only for my title and that I will create a gradient with different opacity levels of white for my other headlines. To do so, add another comment to your variables block. Name the color you want to start with the way you want, and as a definition, you will need to define the color in RGBA. The first numbers in the brackets are your typical font, like the parts of red, green, and blue, while the fourth number describes the opacity in decimals. An opacity of 1 is therefore 100%, an opacity of 0.1 is 10%. Finish your gradient by adding a variable for each opacity step you want to have in here. Add your colors to the elements you want to apply them to and then give it a try. In my case, the links were a bit too dark, so I decided to lighten up the color I used for them. In Visual Studio Code, this is pretty easy. All you have to do is click on the little square in front of your color definition and move the circle around until you have the desired tone. If this switches your color back to RGB, all you have to do is click on the square again and then on the top color bar until it says hex again. Give it another try and that's a color part. For this tutorial, I set a background image using the World Anvil backend. The problem with this becomes obvious when you inspect the site and find out that the background image is assigned to the body element. We are not allowed to edit the body element on World Anvil, so what do we do now? Well, click on the body element in your inspector and this will give you the background image URL. Click on it to open your image in a new tab. Copy the URL and then remove the background image from your World Anvil page. Don't forget to save. Next, add a new code block to the background section of your style sheet. It should point at user CSS presentation. To that code block, add a background property. Instead of using a variable again, this time we will use a URL. Open and close your brackets and add the link inside the brackets. Again, remove any unnecessary spaces from the URL. In addition, we will make sure that the background image covers the whole page. To do so, add the background size property and set it to cover. As a safety net to prevent the image from repeating, set the background repeat property to no repeat. If you don't want your image to scroll at all, add the background attachment property and set it to fixed. This makes sure that your image stays where it is. Give it a try to see how this looks so far. Next, let's add some blur to this image. To do this, go back into your user CSS presentation block in your style sheet. Adding a filter to a background is done with the backdrop filter selector. As a property, add the filter you want to assign, in my case blur, and add the radius in the brackets. I will go with 10 pixels. Give it a last try, adjust as you need, and that's it. Wow, you've learned a lot right now. You can import and use a custom font which you can't find on Google Fonts. You created a color scheme and learned how to gradually decrease the opacity of a color in your variables. In addition, you learned how to give an element a font and a background color. And last, you learned how to add a background to any container and add a blur filter to it so it won't be as distracting. Next time, I will teach you borders, custom icons, and most important, margins and paddings. Until then, I hope this tutorial was helpful to you. If it was, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel to see more content. I will see you next time. Bye bye!